What's going on, guys? This is your motivation guy. That's right, your friend, the one and only Keith Allen. I want to encourage you to always stay positive. Keep that positive mindset. I know it's hard these days, but stay positive, man, because when you have a positive mindset, not only are you going to be successful playing this game, but you're also going to be successful in life. So keep going. This time, we're going to bring you guys the best Brimstone guide you've ever seen. But before we hop into this guide, you know what time it is. It's time for a question of the day. And today's question is, have you joined our Discord server yet? We just launched it recently, and we would love for you guys to come and just hang with all of us. We're going to be hosting community events and giveaways only for the people in our Discord, so you don't want to miss out, guys. All right, with that being out the way, it's time to open up the skies and prep your Stim beacon because Brimstone is coming and he's not stopping. So Brimstone is a former American commander that specializes in orbital bombardment. You know, whether the payload is a smoke or a giant laser depends on how much he doesn't like you or where you're standing. Starting off with what some people consider to be Brimstone's weaker ability, we have Stim Beacon. Okay, so Stim Beacon is an equipable and deployable gadget that grants all teammates and enemies inside its own combat stim. Combat Stim, guys, is a buff that actually has quite a few effects. It grants a 10% increase to rate of fire, 10% faster weapon swap speed, 10% improvement to recoil recovery, and 10% faster reload speed. What's actually pretty sweet about Brimstone's beacon is that its AoE actually extends through walls, allowing you to place it behind a corner or wall while you still have access to the buffs. Stim beacon also cannot be destroyed by teammates or enemies, so don't waste the bullets or utility trying to, as you're also going to reveal your position. One thing unique to Stim Beacon, however, is that the combat Stim buff actually lingers for 4 seconds after leaving the beacon AoE. So don't be afraid to swing that corner and take a fight if you think that you can get the drop on someone. Stim Beacon only remains active for 15 seconds, conveniently just as long as Brimstone Sky Smokes. Speaking of Sky Smokes, okay, I think it's time to move into Brimstone's most iconic ability. You guys ready? Here we go. Sky Smoke is Brimstone's signature ability. Being able to call down a smoke anywhere within a limited range of where Brimstone's is currently standing. As I'm sure most of you guys already know this, being able to call down smokes exactly where you want them is a hugely impactful ability. There is a reason we place Brimstone in the S tier for our 0.50 patch notes tier list. Sky Smoke has a 3-second delay when activated, so make sure to wait for the smokes to deploy before peeking into them. So as mentioned earlier, the smokes will also linger for 15 seconds before disappearing. From stims to smokes, let's shake, or shall I say burn, things up a bit. Here we go. Next up on the list is Incendiary. Incendiary is a pretty simple equip ability where Brimstone will, after a short delay, equip a grenade launcher with an incendiary grenade inside of it. Okay, so the incendiary projectile can bounce off walls, and once it settles on the ground, it will create a pool of fire, much like Phoenix's hot hands. Unlike Phoenix's hot hands, though, the incendiary will burn up, up to 10 seconds, while Phoenix's hot hands will only burn for up to 5 seconds. You know what else Phoenix can't do? Call down a giant freaking laser. Luckily, though, it's okay because Brimstone can. Orbital Strike is a giant laser that really prides itself on showing the enemies exactly where it's going to strike. Orbital Strike is a point-and-click ability like Brimstone's Sky Smokes that calls down a giant laser on a targeted location 2.5 seconds after activation. The laser does 20 damage per tick, so a very high-level tip is not to be standing in it. Fortunately, though, we got some better tips than that waiting for you guys in our next section. Alright guys, time to dive into the meat and potatoes of how to play Brimstone. Alright, Brimstone is a controller class agent, which becomes obvious after glancing at his abilities. He excels in blocking sightlines, delaying pushes, and generally, making life miserable for the enemy team. The difference between a good Brimstone and an amazing Brimstone really comes down to utility, timing, and positioning, depending on the situation they find themselves in. When playing as Brimstone, your value depends on you being alive. And while that may seem like a no-brainer, it's actually probably a bit more complex than you think. Let's assume that you are a Brimstone on defense, and the enemy team is preparing for an attack. If the enemy team notices that you, the Brimstone, are still alive, they are generally going to be more methodical in their play. They will tend to use more utility than necessary to get themselves into sight because they are worried about a Brimstone dropping smokes around them and playing aggressive with a Stim beacon. However, so if the enemy team looks at who is left alive on your team and they only see Duelist alive, or even other support characters that are not good at holding down an objective like Omen or Sova, the enemy team will tend to save their utility for a potential post-plant situation because they don't see a threat in any of those agents like Brimstone. When playing as Brimstone, okay, you should be trying to hold angles that can give you intel, but you are not so dangerous that, if you get rushed, you're gonna be dead. Think like top of ramp in Split, U-Haul on Bind, or A or C site on Haven. All of these positions give a good Brimstone the perfect environment to thrive in. Not only do they provide a nice choke point to funnel enemies into, but they also give Brimstone different ways to deal with aggression. So learning to deal with aggression is probably one of the harder parts of Brimstone. So we're going to break it down for you guys. Here we go. The first thing to understand is that your smokes are not a wall. Friends and foe alike can walk straight through them. Even comboing with your incendiary might not stop a committed jet from trying to get that initial pick and just take you out of the round. So when encountered with situations like this, it's almost always better to just fall back and give the enemies control of that part of the map. This works because Brimstone's utility actually becomes more valuable the later in the round it is, instead of just contesting back up to a secondary position, like inside Heaven if you were, playing on A ramp, backside if you were playing inside U-Haul, or to a different set of cover if playing on Haven. And put down a Stim beacon. Not only will, giving the enemies space make them less likely to push you, but also having your Stim beacon active gives you a clear advantage in firepower over the enemy team. Now all you gotta do is just start using your remaining smokes to enter block off entrances, or if the attackers manage to get into sight, use your smokes to block their lines of sight, alright? An important part of Brimstone's skill ceiling is a pretty simple decision: Stim beacon's placement. Remember, enemies can also gain Stim beacon's buffs, so make sure to place it somewhere that is easily accessible by your team and not by the enemy. The placement really depends on how the round is going and how many teammates you have left alive. But as a general rule, guys, if it is slightly behind you, it's probably okay. Brimstone's Incendiary also has some neat tricks. For one, there are some very useful lineups that have been discovered. We're going to be coming out with a video in the future exploring some of these lineups, but, for right now, check out this one that you can do on Split. Head towards Defender Spawn and find the corner with the tree hanging above it. Aim right where these two leaves interact and then shoot your incendiary. This will actually fall through this hollow part of the building on B site and detonate on top of default box, allowing for pretty easy plant or diffuse denial. Brimstone's incendiary also has quite an arc on it, right after being fired. So, if you're trying to get his incendiary to detonate close to you, aim closer to yourself than usual to account for this extra long arc and bounces of the projectile. Moving into Orbital Strike. Okay, so this is an ability that I've seen so many Brimstones misuse. If you are going to remember anything from this video, guys, remember this, alright? Brimstone's ult is not a fragging ability. It's an area of denial ability. The reason that Brimstone's ultimate is telegraphed 2.5 seconds in advance is to tell the enemy team that for the next 5 or 6 seconds, that area is off limits. It's better to actually just place your orbital strike slightly behind a group of enemies to force them to move forward and hopefully straight into your team's 20-3 raise. That being said, there are some times where Brimstone's ultimate can excel at getting kills. Ropes on Split and Hookah on Bind are great kill boxes to orbital strike if you know enemies are inside those locations, as they are very just hard to escape safely before the giant death laser strikes. Okay guys, let's discuss Brimstone's smokes a bit more as they are arguably the most important part of his kit. An excellent Brimstone will understand how the enemy team reacts to his smokes. Do the enemies push through constantly, or do they treat the smokes like an impassable barrier? For example, let's pretend you are a Brimstone, holding a ramp on Split. You smoke the entrance to A main, but the enemy team doesn't care and pushes through the smoke anyways. They end up killing you and you respond next round. Now, you have a vital piece of information. The enemy team does not respect your smokes. So with that information, you have some options. First, you can decide, to not smoke it anyways, since they're going to push through. Second, you can smoke it again and do nothing, or use a Stim beacon and just try to win the aim duel against anyone who pushes out. Third is you can smoke it again and use your incendiary or ultimate to catch anyone pushing through the smoke. The last option, guys, is to also smoke this same angle again and play close to the smoke to catch anyone pushing through. Now, the smart decision is, actually to start out with our last option, playing around the smoke. The reason that playing so close to the smoke might work better than our other options initially is simply because, we are not changing anything that the enemy team can see. Still, only using a single smoke, and no other abilities. So our hope is that the enemy team thinks that we are still playing in the exact same way as last round and catch them off guard as they push through the smoke. This will hopefully net you a kill or two if they aren't expecting you to be close or, don't bother to check their corners. Now in the next round, you can place this same smoke, but this time use your utility to prevent them pushing through. Use your incendiary with the smoke and place down a stim beacon while not playing too close to the smoke. Now, when the enemies push through, they will expect you to be close to them since they are trying to adapt from the last round. But sucks to be them, as you've switched now your position again and are picking them off at a safe distance. Of course, plans can always change, and this is not a foolproof way to just win every round, but it will hopefully give you guys an idea how to play around Brimstone's utility. If you've been having trouble keeping up, we are offering Valorant coaching on our website, ProGuides.com. So if you like what you see in this video and you want to learn more, we have coaches, guys, standing by just waiting to help you. For the final part of our tips and tricks for Brimstone, we are going to talk about the mind games that you can play with him. With that, let's return to the video. Okay, so I think that all you guys can agree with me on this one, all right? That outsmarting an opponent is always satisfying. And with Brimstone, it's the name of the game. When playing offense with Brimstone, your sky smokes can often be the deciding factor in winning or losing the round. But it's not just knowing, what angles to smoke sometimes, it's knowing what site to smoke. Let's run through another hypothetical, all right? Let's say that you're Brimstone on offense and you're playing on bind. Your team wants to take control of A short and push into A to get the spike planted. You have two general options, okay? Follow the team and head A to smoke for them, or head B and smoke B site. I'm sure a lot of you guys are scoffing and saying, smoke B is dumb since your team wants to end A. But I would argue it leans more on how the enemy team is playing. Okay, so generally when a defender sees 3 smokes go down into a site and hear footsteps and gunfire, they're going to call that, they are getting attacked pretty heavily, even though they can't see exactly what's going on thanks to the smokes. This can cause 1 or 2 players to rotate off the other site, where your teammates are lined up and ready to attack. Now, this is a pretty simple bait and switch tactic, but, learning to master these kind of mind games, man, as Brimstone's is crucial. Okay, so when you start playing him, try to pay attention to how the team you are playing against reacts to your smokes. Do they not care and don't rotate anyone? Do they get antsy and just try to spam through the smokes? Do they get scared and just fall back? All of this information is vital in developing a strategy and then executing it. If you see that even when you drop smokes, no one rotates until the enemy team sees your team pushing in, then trying to bait and switch probably won't work. However, if you see the opposite rotates just because, some smokes were dropped, you have the potential to play some very, very heavy mind games. All right, guys, once again, this is your motivation guy. That's right, your friend, the one and only Keith Allen. Make sure to connect with me on my Insta at Your Motivation Guy. That brings us to the end of our Brimstone guide. I hope you guys liked it. And we also heard your feedback on our other guides. So we tried to include a lot more tactics to this video to truly give you guys the only Brimstone guide you'll ever need. Remember to please drop a like on this video if you learned something new, and consider subscribing for daily uploads of content just like this. All right, guys, we'll see you soon. Peace.